Hi everyone, it's John back with podcast number 22, and I want to talk about the recent heavyweight boxing contest between Anthony Joshua, the IBF WBA champion, and Andy Ruiz Jr, who was the challenger. He also won the WBA belts. So there was a lot at stake. There was a lot on the line about it, and most commentators, most sports aficionados thought this will be a straightforward win for Joshua, who was undefeated going into the contest. I'd actually observed a few of Andy Ruiz's fights, and all the broader commentary seemed to be about his physique, or his rather bloated physique, a rather fat-looking guy. But there seemed to be an acknowledgement that he did have a lot of power, and that he had fast hands. And he talked about before the fight, actually, about employing the Mexican style, that being that he was going to walk forward and take the shots just so he could land some of his own. And I wondered what you all thought about that, because in my view, obviously, if you can avoid getting hit and land a telling shot, you do so, but sometimes it's worth taking the hit. Sometimes you'll find that your opponent hasn't actually hit you in a vulnerable area. They've landed a shot and maybe it's clean and reasonably powerful, but your immediate follow-up shot is better and more telling and more damaging, and it might not even be in that moment, but it certainly does manifest itself and appear over the course of about however long it lasts. What was telling about Ruiz's accuracy was that if you punch someone on the chin and they got a glass chin, usually it's lights out, you'll be knocked out, but your recovery will be a little bit more quicker. Why Anthony Joshua had no real response to the knockdown that he suffered in round 3 of the contest, having floored Ruiz just moments earlier himself, was because Ruiz had clipped him behind the ear, just right on the temple. Now, most martial artists will know that a back fist or a backhand or a kick employed to the side of the temple will not necessarily drop the opponent, although it often will. But what it will do is move the head in a very unnatural way that is very uncomfortable and destabilizing. This is exactly what happened to Anthony Joshua. And I know people have made some sort of well, there must have been some juju going on. Joshua had the photo with Drake and had suffered the curse of Drake and so on. And that's all, you can talk about that and say, yeah, that's exactly what happened. But for me, this wasn't any fluke, and if it does turn out that Anthony Joshua comes back in the rematch, because Eddie Hearn, his manager, is talking about the rematch and saying that it's definitely going to happen, and it's a must-win fight for Anthony Joshua, which I would say it is, because where does he go if he loses? To the second, third tier of boxing, and as far away from Deontay Wilder, the current WBC champion, and the lineal champion, if you like, Tyson Fury. Does talk that up quite a lot. It's not a real belt, but I can appreciate where he's coming from with that. But really, what counts is the current belt holders, and all those belts now sit in the United States. Even if Ruiz actually has the fight outside of the country, if he fights in England, for example, I still think it's difficult for Anthony Joshua, and the reason for that is that I feel he took a beating for 7 rounds. This wasn't a to and fro fight where Andy Ruiz landed a big shot and dropped him. This was a systematic battering over 7 rounds. I've looked at the fight a few times, and I can't even see where Joshua won a round. There's no argument for saying round 1 maybe and round 5, but Ruiz was definitely involved in those rounds and was competing well, and you've got to give massive respect to him, because you see, people talk about a 5-week training camp for Andy Ruiz, 5 to 6 weeks, and of course he was the stand-in opponent. He was supposed to fight Jarrell Miller, Joshua was, and then when all that PED controversy came out, Ruiz stepped in. Apparently he was bugging Eddie Hearn's Instagram account and saying, "Why don't you let me have a go?" And these days with social media, this seems to be how the big fights happen. So round 3 was definitely the end of the fight for Anthony Joshua, and so in another way you got to respect the fact that he lasted another 4 rounds, because he was just surviving at that point. He was in another dimension at that point. He wouldn't have had the focus needed to get back into the fight. And the only way really after round 3, and as it headed towards the middle rounds, that I could see him winning is if Andy Ruiz somehow gassed himself out. But far from doing that, the man who has actually had the athletic physique, Anthony Joshua, was gassed out. And this has happened to AJ in previous fights as well. We've seen it against Vladimir Klitschko, against Dillian White, even against Alexander Povetkin. So there's something wrong in how he's training, because a guy who does a lot of road work like he does should have the stamina. He lifts a lot of weight, so therefore his punches should carry weight. They didn't seem to faze Ruiz at all, and if you look at Ruiz in the post-fight conference, there was hardly a mark on him. Talking about how the fight ended, I don't think there was anything controversial about that. I think the referee, Mike Griffin, did him a favour by stopping the fight. To be knocked down 4 times and know that you're going to fight that guy again at some point, I think that leaves a psychological effect that's rather damaging. So if Anthony Joshua comes back from this and wins, I don't think it's a fluke. I think it will be an amazing achievement to become a 2-time world heavyweight boxing champion. But something tells me that Andy Ruiz will somehow find a way to defeat him. You see, Joshua can win, but he's got to bring it all in that first round or 2. I don't even think it can go past round 1. But when he threw the hooks towards Ruiz, he was completely exposed, and the body shots that Ruiz was landing on him were really telling, which tells you that for all the nice physique, there wasn't a lot of substance behind those well-defined abs. And if you look at someone like Floyd Mayweather Jr, who's got a really great physique, he's got very well-defined abs, better than Anthony Joshua's, I would say, and he's the older man as well, Floyd Mayweather Jr. So the training he's doing must be working. Anthony Joshua basically decided to trade blows with Andy Ruiz, and given that the guy just kept on coming forward, didn't seem fazed by shots at all. Indeed, when he got knocked down by Joshua in the 3rd, he just got back up and really went after him. I mean, it was a hell of a response. It was similar in character to how Tyson Fury responded in his 12th round knockdown against Deontay Wilder in their first fight at the end of 2018. But the difference was Fury didn't have really any power to trouble Wilder at that point. Had that knockdown occurred in the 10th or the 12th round, had Anthony Joshua survived whatever Ruiz had thrown at him for 12 rounds and then dropped him in the 12th, I think it's a different story. But we've got to go with what's happened this time. So major congratulations to Andy Ruiz Jr. He had his moment and he took it and really answered the Warriors' call. It's really difficult, and the manner in which he did it will never be forgotten. So Anthony Joshua made a statement in the US in his maiden bout, but it was for a lot of different reasons that he wouldn't have been expecting. But he is a professional fighter, and he is the pride of England. There's a lot of love for him in the United Kingdom. So I think whatever happens in the rematch, there will be a lot of respect, and people will want him to win from this side of the pond. I think it's difficult. I don't think Ruiz's win was a fluke at all. I think it was a shock, certainly, but not a fluke. And if you look at his record, he'd only lost one fight to former WBO holder Joseph Parker, who eventually got outpointed by Anthony Joshua as well. And that, when you look at how Ruiz fought against Parker, Ruiz can feel a little bit hard done by, I would say. He had to go to New Zealand for that fight. So let me know what you think in the comments. I thought it was an absolutely fascinating contest, and I hope we have more of those types of fights to come. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you again soon.